There never seems to be enough of what's needed in the moment. For example, even though we may see our outdoor pantry as an important ministry, there never seems to be enough food or finances to sustain it for more than a week or two. So the board of directors struggles over whether to shift money from the church's general fund into the outdoor pantries fund, or to appeal to the congregation for financial support or food products suitable for unhoused people. And if they decide on an appeal, will people give over and above their regular giving? Or will they give money that would have normally gone to the general fund, in effect robbing Peter to pay Paul? There's never enough money. There are never enough votes either. In the last presidential election, only about 1/4 of Texans voted. That's more than 12 million registered voters who didn't exercise their voting rights. More than 12 million people who feel their vote doesn't matter. Just think what changes could happen in the political arena if there were enough voters who exercised their voting rights. In this morning's reading, the disciples also understand what it means to not have enough. When Jesus told them to feed the crowd of people, they responded by saying there wasn't enough money to feed them all. It would take the equivalent of 7 months' wages to feed them, they said. And without another word, Jesus got busy. And when it was all said and done, the crowd of more than 5,000 people had been fed with just 2 fish and 5 small loaves of bread, with baskets of food left over. Now we can exhaust ourselves wondering how this happened. Did the crowd of people actually have food that they wouldn't share until the pattern was set? Is that when they pulled out the food they had brought with them and maybe even shared some with the person sitting next to them? Or did everyone decide that one nibble was enough? Did Jesus really make 5,000 lunches appear out of thin air? Or maybe this account was meant to show how much greater Jesus was than the ancient prophet Elisha, who is recorded in the book of 2 Kings as feeding 100 people with just 20 loaves of bread. Or maybe, just maybe, the reason this is the only miracle story that makes it into all 4 Gospels is because it isn't really about food at all, but instead about compassion. When Jesus stepped out of the boat and saw desperate and needy people, he had compassion. He was able to see the world through their eyes. He saw the father who skipped a meal every so often so his family could have enough to eat. He saw the look of fear in the pregnant mother because only 1/3 of the infants in that day survived birth. He saw utter hopelessness in the eyes of people who believed that God had forgotten them. And he had compassion for them. He literally suffered with them. And we read the following from this morning's text. When it grew late, the disciples of Jesus came to him and said, "This is a deserted place, and the hour is now very late. Send them away, so that they may go into the surrounding country and villages and buy something for themselves to eat." Clearly, the disciples had not seen the same thing Jesus had seen when they looked at the crowd. At best, they had pity for the crowds, but not compassion. when they said the crowd needed to be sent away so they could buy food for themselves, as if anyone had the money to do so. At worst, the disciples pretending to be concerned about the crowd's hunger was just an excuse to get rid of them so the disciples could get on with their lives. It's time to wrap it up, Jesus. We're moving into overtime here. And when Jesus said, no, let's not wrap it up yet, there are still needs to be met. The disciples pointed out the severe shortage of resources. But this wasn't about a food shortage among the crowd of people. It was about a compassion shortage among the disciples. But the disciples, unaware that the problem was with them, no doubt expected Jesus to save the day. After all, in just the previous chapter, they had witnessed him healing a man possessed by a legion of demons. They had seen him heal a woman who had endured vaginal hemorrhaging for the past 12 years, and they had even seen him restore a young girl to life. So, if he felt the crowd of more than 5,000 people should be fed, then he needed to get busy. But again, the issue wasn't a shortage of food. It was a shortage of compassion. So this is what Jesus did. He ordered the disciples to sit the people in groups of 150 on the grass. That meant they had to get right up in the face of the people and ask them to sit down. And then we read that after blessing the bread and breaking the loaves, he gave them to his disciples to set before the people. You can't do that from a distance. When you are required to bend over and serve the people, you find yourself looking into the same eyes that Jesus looked into. And some of the eyes are filled with tears because they haven't tasted food for several days. And some of them can't stop telling you how grateful they are, while others are silent because they still have enough dignity that they don't like feeling beholden to another person. And suddenly, the compassion which at first only Jesus seemed to possess has miraculously multiplied. Because whether you look into their eyes or you hear them tell their story, you can't connect with another person and not have compassion for them. When you pass the bread to them and your fingers accidentally brush against theirs, there is more experienced in that moment than physical touch. You experience compassion. So while some may say there aren't enough funds or food for our outdoor pantry, I think that's not the problem at all. I think there may not be enough compassion. And if we understand this morning's text, the way to experience compassion is to get up close to the person who depends on the pantry to get by. Ask them their name. Tell them yours. Offer them a drink to go along with their food. Move beyond pity and try to see the moment as more than your good deed for the day. And when you go to the polls, vote as if your skin is not white. As if your parents need medical care and as if your spouse is an immigrant. Vote as if your land is on fire, as if your house is flooded, and as if your water is unsafe. Vote as if your child is transgender, your brother is gay, your sister is a victim of gun violence, and your daughter is a sexual assault survivor. Because you see, privilege has no place in an election, but compassion does. Friends, there is a severe shortage of compassion in our world today. We don't like feeling uncomfortable. We see all we have, and we don't want to be made to feel guilty for having it. And so we distance ourselves from others. But when we do, we contribute to the compassion shortage. Jesus tells us to bend over and serve each other. Risk brushing your fingers against a stranger's when you help them out. Look into the eyes of your neighbor. Listen to their story. Tell them yours. If we do, we will participate in the miraculous multiplication of compassion. And that's the only thing I know that can change the mess the world is in right now. Amen.